man. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Mission Driven Made podcast. I want to welcome educator, author, and founder of Physique Development, Austin Curran, to the show. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And so what we normally do on the show before we get into the fun and juicy stuff and all your accomplishments, I'd love to hear about the person's background before they had all their accomplishments. So if you could start a bit with your upbringing, and then we'll kind of take off from there. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. I'll just go with whatever kind of pops in my head. So this, origin story, as if we're all some type of superhero, which you could argue. But no, I mean, I think it kind of all starts out with being a really shy kid. But one that really just kind of, once it clicked. And, I think that's been a theme throughout. It has been, I'm just going to observe from the sidelines for as long as I need to, and not really get too mixed up in any one thing, and see how things sort of evolve and how they sort of come to fruition. And when I'm ready, I'll jump in. Like, never been one that's like, hey man, best way to learn how to swim is just throw you in. Nope. I want to watch other people swim. And then I may need some lessons to learn how to swim, and then I'll swim. But if you try to push me in, I'm just going to, ferociously doggy paddle back to the side and get the hell out of the pool, because I'm not ready yet. And, I think that's sort of a good, if I could think about it, a good way to sort of, introduce you to me and how I sort of operate mentally. I just kind of observe, and then when it clicks, sort of thing. Go ahead and ask whatever you have more. But that's sort of like the first thing that came to my head.
No, this is great. You started that off a little different than most people, which I love. My question for you is, so you would say you were like growing up a little bit more on the introverted side?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And I would say a very subtle way to say it. But yeah, very, very shy, very introverted, very to myself person, always have been. And I think that has, in many ways, I don't ever want to say it's like held me back, but it's definitely, I think, changed the trajectory of what has happened, how it's happened, and what will happen in the future. And it's one of those things where I'm never quite sure. I don't think any of us really know how things happen. It's sort of this serendipitous thing that just sort of occurs. And, I love music. I'm always listening. If the sound was on when I entered the chat here, you probably would have heard you would have heard music playing, because as soon as I wake up, it turns on, and basically into the evening, it doesn't really shut off until my wife makes me, or we go to bed. So that's one of those things. But one thing that a lot of musicians kind of talk about is, they always get asked, like, did you ever think that this would happen, or you'd meet this person, or whatever else? And, the answer is sort of like, no. It's like everything that's happened is sort of this really pleasant surprise. And it's just been almost saying yes to whatever is next, and allowing whatever is next to just sort of unfold. And you just sort of try to make the most of what you can of it. And that's how I sort of approach things. Is I'm not sure what's next. I'm not sure how things have happened, but when they do come up, it's how do I make the most of it? How do I give my all to it? And then hopefully through that experience and through that sort of unfolding, that kind of gets me into what I do next. And that kind of opens doors itself, in and of itself. So,
I ask because when I just think of myself and growing up till now, I've progressively become more introverted. Like I was a little bit more extroverted as a kid and, playing sports, and I felt like I always need to be around people. And then later in my 20s, that started going the complete opposite direction. So that was really interesting when you said you've always kind of sat back and observed before you dove in. So has that, up till this point, has it changed at all, or have you kind of always felt that way?
I've kind of always felt that way. It's my, I think we all kind of go back to our default, and that's my default. Like if I'm, I'm very, uh, I'm very sensitive to my surroundings in the sense where, you know, sound, smell, light, just like everything is just, I get, everything can be a lot of like very overpowering, and I can get very overwhelmed very easily if things are too much. And I think that's a big part of why I've always been very introverted and to myself. And, I try to create very calm surroundings and very, create my own elements, where I am. And anytime I'm really out doing something, there's a level of discomfort there, but I do my best to sort of just like create my own environment where I am. And also just try and mix that with leaning into whatever moment I'm in. And, whatever happens, there's never really a premeditated concept of whatever I'm trying to accomplish in any given moment. It's sort of just like, well, whatever this is, it will be. And I'm just going to be myself. And you either vibe with that and that's cool, or you don't vibe with that. And, I'm happy either way. I'm just going to keep doing my thing and exist how I exist. So
I bet you have a really close group of friends, but there's only a handful that you're really close
very
with
few.
and let in, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And it's not even like, it's very few. And it's funny because like when my wife and I first met, she was really surprised to kind of hear that I didn't have many friends. And just because like I am, I would say, someone who's very easy to get along with. And it sort of went back to how I defined friend, because it's like I more or less was challenging my own concept and her concept of what is a friend. And when I said originally like I didn't have many friends, or I don't have many friends, never have throughout my life, I always have a ton, I have a ton of acquaintances. I have a ton of people that I'm involved with and have a good working relationship with. I think it all comes down to our working definitions of these words and kind of what they mean to us. And, a friend is like, if shit went down and, or like, hey, I need you to help me move this immovable object today. It's going to be, it's not going to be fun. I need you at the most inconvenient time. Who shows up, right? And the people that I've called upon in those moments show up, right? And it kind of comes down to who's going to show up, and that's not to take away from people who don't. And obviously there's a huge like gray area there in terms of like, hey man, like I'm also at a funeral, I can't come. And it's like that's not a hard and fast truth, but it's sort of the metaphor of who's there for you and who's there for you without any expectation of return. Like, all right, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's sort of to give without any expectation of return, which I think is in its truest form, like vulnerability and allowing that to sort of just be what it is within a friendship. And I've always had a very close circle, but to kind of draw that back, the definitions we give words, or the meaning we give words, I think is the really powerful thing. And it may sound like I agonize over, after this, I'm going to agonize over like, all right, who's my friend based off that definition? It's like, it's sort of whatever I feel, it's whatever that feels like to me. And it's like, is this person, do they feel like a friend? Have they become a friend? And obviously you have your really close friends and everything else. Again, like, I don't want to make this a semantics things. I hate semantics, but it's just one of those things where, you sort of find yourself around someone who's introverted and has always been very shy. I'd say I'm less shy today, but I'm still very introverted. Your friends are kind of like who naturally stick around while you aren't giving your all to accumulating friends, if that makes sense. Like there's a there's a certain pursuit of friendship that you can feel that some people are trying to get or gain in any given situation. And those who have stuck around to be my friends throughout my lifetime are the friendships or the relationships that sort of just naturally evolved to become friendships rather than being a pursuit of a friendship, if that makes sense.
And the way that you were defining a friend, which I agree 1,000% with, by that definition or somewhere on that spectrum, I don't feel like a person can even have a lot of friends if that's the definition, which I agree with. It wouldn't really be possible, I don't think.
No, and again, it's a semantic thing, and I don't really like arguing semantics, but it's just a feeling, right? It's a concept, it's sort of a framework, it's a structure, and it's sort of like once you tear away all the BS that we all live with, on a daily basis with social media and whatever else, like what do you, as a human, like what do you feel? When you kind of tear away all the layers, it's just like, how do you feel about this? And there's a feeling you have about people. There's a feeling you have about your friends and these relationships you have. And, that I think that is more or less the defining factor of it, rather than like some sort of label or some sort of timestamp of like, well, I've known this person for 8 years and they must be my friend. It's like, well, I don't know. Let's maybe not,
Yeah.
but maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. And in high school, did you start your pursuit of, learning about exercise science and all of that? Like what was it like in high school as far as that?
Yeah. So I had such a, I sometimes I kind of talk about this in a way where it's like, there's almost no way I don't end up where I am based off of like the teaching that I was given throughout my life. So, I started working out and I started going into the gym when I was, 11, 12 years old with my brother who had just started up who was to become my strength conditioning coach throughout 7th and 8th grade, all the way through 12th grade. And then into university, actually, he became a professor and one of my mentors throughout university and college and whatever else. And I think that was really, really cool and really special. And someone who was very overqualified for his position. And, I was just very fortunate to be a part of that group of people that got to work under him as a strength conditioning coach. Someone who's always been a stickler for exercise technique, program design, doing things the right way, and only progressing when you show the attributes of appropriate progression, right? So if, like I was squatting overhead with a PVC pipe for a long while before I was even given a barbell to put on my back. And I think that in and of itself is sort of, before I ever did a hang clean or a power clean, I was doing a lot of shrug work, triple extension work. You build the foundations before you build on top of that, right? So your house isn't built on, on a foundation of cards, right? You're not building a house of cards, or your foundation isn't built on sand, right? It's sort of this concrete structure that you can then really trust to build upon because you've sort of laid the groundwork.